And up until this point, the water has turned off, and we've just met Kelton. We've just met Alyssa, and we met Kelton already. And then we know that Kelton kind of has a little bit of a thing for Alyssa in a creepy but funny and endearing way. And things are really starting to escalate with this water crisis. This is Kelton, chapter 6. I decided not to tell my father about the military trucks we saw at our high school. It's not that I don't think it's a significant development, but seeing that we haven't yet been able to get in touch with my older brother Brady, there's no point in rocking the proverbial boat if we're just going to wait here for him anyway, rather than take off to our bug out in the mountains. With my dad, the embers of Armageddon are quickly growing into a full-on blazing apocalypse in his head. He already got that crazy look in his eye after hearing about the closures of so many school districts, which, by the way, is no tragedy to me. Not that I hate school, it's just that when it comes down to it, I learn a lot more just hanging out at home anyway. I'd probably be homeschooled if it was either of my parents had the patience to do it. To take my mind off things, I load up my paintball gun and practice in the backyard. I'm hitting every target on point, and I try to tell myself it's a good omen. The desal rigs down at the beach will do their job. No one will go thirsty. All will be well. My dad steps out onto the patio. "Don't forget to exhale with your shot," he says. He knows his stuff. After all, he did spend 12 years in the Marine Corps. My mom likes to make fun of him and his career as a jarhead and his extraction missions because technically he worked as a military dentist and never actually left his base. After a few more shots, my CO2 cartridge runs out. I go inside to change it. And right after I finish loading the new cartridge, there's a knock at the front door. My dad answers it. It's Roger Malecki, one of our other neighbors. The Maleckis just had a baby, so we never really see them much. Actually, we never saw them much before the baby either. We're not exactly social butterflies in our family. "How are things, Roger?" my dad says pleasantly. Don't ask," Malecki says. "The car keeps overheating, plus we're having problems with the sewage. The whole house stinks." "I hear ya," says my dad. "You know, the Morrows next door had the exact same problem, although he doesn't offer Malecki any trap seal liquor." Then Malecki begins to avoid eye contact. My father has no patience for beating around the bush. "What can I do for you, Roger?" Malecki heaves a sigh. "It's the baby. Hannah's still able to breastfeed her, but she's getting dehydrated. I'm afraid she won't be able to breastfeed much longer, and we have some powdered formula, but that's kind of useless without water." "I'm sorry to hear that," my dad says genuinely. "How can we help?" "Well, we know you have survival supplies. Hell, everyone knows you've got enough squirreled away in there to survive at the apocalypse." Then he laughs nervously, noticing my dad frowning a bit at the word squirreled, as if preparing for the worst is somehow worthy of ridicule. And just then I notice that Malecki's hands are shaking anxiously, and like he's went over this dialogue in his head 1,000 times and still screwed it up. I know my dad well enough to know that he doesn't give handouts. Plus, when you start giving things away for free, it's a slippery slope. And if there's one thing that my dad hates, it's slippery slopes. My dad casually, strategically puts his hand on the door. Not to close it, but to give him leverage in case he needs to. The key word there, Roger, is survival. We have just enough to survive. Malecki takes a moment to regroup his thoughts and tries again. "All right, I get it," he says. You have principles and you don't want to compromise them. But I'm begging you, Richard, there's got to be something you can do. I mean, the baby." My dad weighs the possibilities. "I'm sure I could give you a few pointers," he says. "Pointers?" My dad motions towards Malecki's yard. "You've got a marvelous garden of succulents. You could grind those up and squeeze at least a gallon out of them. I could even show you how to make a condenser to extract the water." "The cactuses?" Malecki laughs, incredulous. My dad smiles graciously. "Cacti," he gently grins. "You could have fresh water by tomorrow." Malecki's smile fades, realizing that my father isn't joking. "I have a family to look after. I don't have that kind of time." "Well, if you want water, you'll make the time." But rather than formulating a response, his eyes narrow and his lips curl with rage. He steps forward, getting into my dad's face. "Who the hell do you think you are?" But my dad stays cool, collected. "Roger, I'm offering you a gift much more valuable than a bottle of water. It's self-reliance." Malecki's expression darkens, and he gets this strange, wild look in his eyes. "You're just going to stand there and let my wife's breast milk run dry? How dare you get angry at me, as if your lack of foresight is my fault? You're a son of a bitch, you know that, and my dad's done. He doesn't suffer fools lightly, and to him, anyone who expects others to solve their problems is a fool. Why don't you come back when you're ready to behave like a functioning member of society?" He tries to shut the door, but Malecki lunges forward across the threshold, blocking the door from closing. "I should smack that grin right off your face," says Malecki, although my dad isn't grinning at all. My dad tries to shoulder him out, but Maleki has all the adrenaline of a desperate man, and he pushes farther in. He knocks my father off balance, and the door swings open. And that's when I raise my gun, exhale, and pull the trigger. 3 times. I shoot Maleki square in the chest, right on target. The force of the blast blows him back against the door jamb. All his bravado is gone. He wails, thinking he's dying. Then he reaches into his chest and examines the blue phosphorescent ooze on his shirt. My heart pounds, probably as much as his. He looks up to me with this forlorn, bewildered look, as if I really had blown a hole through his chest. Then I reach for my backpack, hanging on the rack near the front door. I cram my arm in, shift around, and produce a water bottle I bought at school when it was something I took for granted. I shove it into his blue, dripping hands. Take it and leave, I tell him. Maleki looks at the bottle of water and goes red in the face, embarrassed like it wasn't too late for his humanity to suddenly come rushing back. He turns, and like that, he's gone. In an instant, my dad looks to me, his lip bloodied from the scuffle, now wearing this violently charged expression, and I can't tell if he's just worked up or if he truly disapproves of what I did. Not that I blasted the guy with paint, but that I gave him my water. This was none of your business, my father says sternly. You shouldn't have interfered. Yes, sir, I tell him. I know, sir. I always call him sir when he's pissed off at me. Then he closes the door and strides away. The thing is, I'm glad I did what I did. Not just because it has always been a fantasy of mine to blast our neighbors with my paintball gun, but because whether my dad knows it or not, I saw what was coming next, what would have happened if I didn't pull my trigger. Because at the apex of that confrontation, my dad's hand had instinctively traveled down to his belt, where his gun was nestled in its holster.
This next section, told from Alyssa's first-person point of view, happens a day later when Alyssa and her younger brother Garrett's parents have gone down to the beach, to Laguna Beach, to the desalination rigs that have been set up by FEMA. They left in the afternoon. They didn't come back that night, and now it's morning, and there's been no word from where they are. They haven't come home. So Alyssa, Garrett, and Kelton ride their bikes down to the beach to see if they could find out what happened to Alyssa and Garrett's parents. We arrive mid-morning at Laguna Beach, where the marine layer still creates an overcast haze, keeping the shoreline mercifully cool. I can smell the ocean and feel the salt air making my clothes cling to my skin. Waves thunder in the distance, and although the ocean's cadence has always been comforting to me, the silence that lingers in between each crashing wave now strikes me as odd. Still, I push forward on my bike, flying down the last stretch of road, which dead ends into the Pacific Coast Highway and the beach just beyond. I don't feel the blisters on my hands anymore, or the ache in my legs. I have to see that beach. I have to know that my parents are there and that they're okay. But once I'm across PCH at the edge of the boardwalk, I hit my brakes hard and stop dead in my tracks. Because before me isn't a beach populated by families retrieving water rations, but a vast sandy wasteland. It's virtually deserted, with just a few random people who seem to meander aimlessly. Farther out, towards the water's edge, are machines hitched to the backs of trucks, maybe half a dozen of them spread out along the beach, but they're not producing water. They're not doing anything. In fact, one of them is spewing black smoke and another one is lying on its side. I drop my bike and step down from the boardwalk to the sand, with Garrett and Kelton close behind. My eyes dart around, searching for my parents, desperate for even the slightest sign of them. And then Garrett says, "Alyssa, do you hear that?" I do. It's a sound almost musical and eerily electronic that lingers just beneath the sound of the waves. I walk across the sand and the sound gets louder, and I realize it's not just one sound, but many, all blending together. And all at once I realize what it is. Cell phones. The ringtones of cell phones. There are dozens of them lying in the sand around us, creating an eerie 8-bit symphony. The lost calls of 1,000 souls. None of us knows how to react. We just watch the phones as they vibrate and ring, trying to overcome our shock. And suddenly I realize that until just a short time ago, I was on the other end of one of those lines, calling nonstop, desperately hoping that someone would answer. I see one vibrating halfway out of the sand, and I dare myself to grab it. I hold it in my hand, and after one more ring, I answer, pressing the sandy iPhone to my ear. "Hello?" comes the voice of a child on the other end of the line. "Mom?" He couldn't be any older than Garrett. I try to choose my words carefully. This isn't your mother, I tell him. Where's my mom? Begs the child. Who is this? Why do you have her phone? I pause, not sure what I can say to him, to calm him. I'm at the beach, I tell him. Your mom dropped her phone at the beach. She went there to get water. I don't think there's any water here, I tell him. Can you tell that to an adult? Please, tell that to an adult. Where's my mom? The kid cries. I try to formulate the best response I can, but it's like I've lost my ability to put together coherent thoughts. I have no answer for him any more than I have an answer for myself. I'm sorry, I tell him. Then I hang up and I drop the phone in the sand, and when it rings again, I bury it. I bury it deep enough so at least there's one phone I can't hear ringing anymore. What happened here? Asks Kelton. And bit by bit the clues emerge. They are in plain sight around us, right there in the sand. It's as if a tornado had passed through, depositing debris everywhere. Debris that looms like a shadow of terrible events I can't even begin to imagine. Plastic tables and chairs are overthrown. Trash all around being picked at by seagulls. A single abandoned shoe, which somehow seems creepiest of all. And the sand is peppered with black aluminum cans, dozens of them. I'm hit with a wave of the most awful stench, like bleach mixed with snot. It stings the inside of my nostrils, so I hold my nose, but it hardly helps. Kelton reaches down and picks up one of the cans, holding it at a safe distance. These are tear gas canisters, Kelton says. There must have been a riot squad here. And then there are the machines. We approach the closest one. I can see that it's torn to shreds. All of them are. This one's stainless steel facade has been peeled back, exposing its innards as if it were decomposing from the inside out. Tubes and wiring herniate from the opening, all leading to a series of dials and gauges connected to 3 ruptured vats, and behind it a series of arrested pistons. Could people have done this? Could we have fought each other over these life-saving machines, reducing them to scrap metal? Could we be so desperate for drinkable water that we're willing to destroy the very machines that could create it just to get that first sip? And if so, were Mom and Dad among them? Now I can see that at each ruined desalination machine stands a police officer in riot gear with an automatic rifle, warning people to keep away, as if there's still something to protect. What happened here? I asked the one closest to us, keeping a safe distance. You need to leave the beach, miss. Go home. Wait there for further instructions. What happened to the people who were here? I ask. Were they sent somewhere else? A different beach? It isn't safe to be here, he tells me. You need to go home. I back away right into Garrett, whose eyes have teared up, and it has nothing to do with the tear gas. Make him tell you where they went, Garrett says, as if he can order me to make demands of an armed officer. Guys? I look over to Kelton, who's standing closer to the water's edge. I follow his gaze to the spiteful ocean and direct all of my hate toward it. I can't stand the way each crashing wave of undrinkable water mocks us. What is that? Asks Kelton. He points to something that's floating, moving forward and backward with the rolling surf, a dark outline in the water, visible only for moments between waves. Is that? Kelton squints. Is that a body? And I know that whatever it is, I've had enough. It's more than not wanting to know. I don't even want to know the depths of the things I don't want to know.
I'm going to do one more. So they continue on, and then they then pick up the character Jackie, and then we meet our 4th character Henry, who has been taking advantage of this whole drought situation. So I'll start with him. Henry, chapter 18. There's a very specific way that one must think if one wishes to achieve true success. You could run the best textile company in the world, design a new propulsion system for NASA, even paint the next Mona Lisa. And at that point, you may be rich, but you'll still be one important skill set away from being wealthy. That's because wealth is a mindset. Or as my mentor, Vice Principal Metzer, always says, rich is an adjective and wealth is a verb. Actually, it's a noun, but that's besides the point. True wealth is only established after you've disciplined yourself to invest in assets that generate enough income to cover your expenses. Right now, my expenses are minimal, and my new hydration business has taken off, launched through the roof, and shot into the stratosphere. My parents and I live in a gated community called Dove Canyon, and when you're living in upper middle class Orange County, and especially in a canyon, elevation is everything. That's why my mom and dad invested in a house near the top of the hill. It's one of the biggest in the community, with a panoramic view presiding over the golf course and most every other house that shares their zip code. And since my parents left on vacation last week, I've been looking after our home all alone, even through these difficult times. The tap out has not only contributed to my growth as a person, but has proven to be a fantastic learning experience in business and commerce. A while back, my father encouraged my mother to start a business of her own. Instead, she let one of her friends talk her into buying 60 cases of Aqua Viva, a pyramid scheme where you pretty much spend a ridiculous amount of money to purchase 720 bottles of alkaline-infused goji berry mineral water, only for it to sit in your guest room for 6 months because nobody wants to buy alkaline-infused goji berry mineral water. However, now that the value of water has exponentially risen, and I've been turning a substantial profit on the Aqua Viva. If I've learned anything in my studies, it's that the greatest investors capitalize in times of crisis. And although at first it may sound cold, it's the giant's duty to continue to stand tall and generate profit, which will lead to spending, and ultimately stimulate the economy for the greater good. I'm eating red licorice and leftover cookies from my father's most recent company party when the doorbell rings. Another customer. I answer the door, and to my surprise, it's Spencer, a kid who lives a few houses up. I never particularly cared for Spencer. His house is at the very top of the hill, higher and bigger than ours, but technically ours is taller. Back in elementary school, we'd open up lemonade stands across the street from one another, where when we were a little older, we would silently compete for magazine subscription sales for our school fundraisers. And if it looked like he wasn't going to win, his parents would buy Reader's Digest magazines for every friend on their contact list, something that my parents refused to do, and as a result, I would always come in second. It used to bother me. Now I just see it as an early lesson in the inherent value of healthy competition, but I still don't like him. Hi, Henry. Hey, what's up, Spencer? Come on in. I welcome him into my home and lead into the living room. I notice his slow, irresolute movements as he walks. Can I get you anything? I say, as a formality, and as a way of opening negotiations. He takes a seat on the leather couch. He's looking weak, feverish. A lot of people have been that way. I think it's a little bit more than just mere dehydration. You okay, I ask, knowing that he's not, but wondering if he'll admit it. The water from the old tank on the hill, he says. I don't know, I think it's bad or something. While everyone else in SoCal was scrambling for water, Dove Canyon thought they had it made. Although our primary water tank was down to the dregs before the tap out, there was an older one at the top of the hill that had been taken out of service. Someone had the bright idea of reconnecting it and to get the last of its water, and bingo, we had water for 2 days longer than anywhere else. The problem is, now everyone's getting sick from it. Everyone but me, that is, because I never trusted tap water, even when it was supposed to be good. And besides, in sales, you not only have to believe in your product, but live by it. Spencer heaves a heavy, achy breath and rolls his neck and says, So I heard you have water. I do, I tell him, as I sink deeply into the adjacent couch, letting the moment become intentionally awkward. I'll give you the autographed Peyton Manning ball, he says, making a first offer, which really puts him at a disadvantage. Even if he thought it was his best offer, now it's just the floor of our negotiation. Barely worth half a bottle, I explained to him. And you know, I'm not really into football. Besides, I've already checked, and that ball is only valued at $250. He thinks quickly. The ball and a bottle of Johnny Walker, King George edition, he adds, for your father. A nice gesture, but I have to turn him down. The problem with most people in a barter economy is that they're just trading for one consumable for another. But if you truly want to build wealth, you need to be trading up for appreciating assets. My father has always stressed the importance of diversification, and I like to think that I've acquired a diversified portfolio for my hydration business, a portfolio that I plan to turn for a profit on eBay. So far, I've acquired a surround sound system, a vintage vinyl record collection, a Thomas Kincaid painting, an autographed first edition of the Maltese Falcon, and a yellow scaled ball python. So what does Spencer have that's worthy of adding to my collection? How about my Xbox? He says. I shake my head. Everyone's offering me Xboxes. He knows what I want, and this dance is just winding us closer to it, because in his bonus room hangs a framed autographed Michael Jordan jersey, the baby blue one from when he was back in college. Very rare, valued at nearly $2,000. He won't say it. He won't offer it. He's going to make me ask for it. Fair enough. The Jordan jersey, I say. A case of water that's 12 one-liter bottles for the Jordan jersey. I can't. My father will kill me. That's the offer, I tell him with a shrug. He grits his teeth and squints like he's taking a painful crap and then says, 2 cases. And I know that I've won. I stand up, feigning, ending the negotiation. If you're not serious about this, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. 1.5 cases, he says. I sigh. Fine. But only because we go way back. I would have actually made the deal for 2 cases, but like I said, I don't like Spencer. I reach under the couch and pull a bottle of water out that I typically have reserved for samples. There's only a third left, so I toss it to him. First drink's free, I tell him. Consider it a bonus. And he's instantly guzzling. Aquaviva is pumped from an artesian aquifer in Portugal, nearly a mile beneath the Earth's surface, I inform him as he drinks. It's then ionized for perfect pH balance to increase oxygen in your blood and maintain energy throughout your day. And just before bottling, it's infused with antioxidant-rich goji berries that not only detoxify your liver, but improve immune function. Spencer finishes the bottle and looks to me like he's in love. Maybe he is. I've heard that about him, but right now, I think it's the kind of agape you feel for your personal savior. Tell you what I say. I'll give you the case and a half for the jersey, the ball, and the bottle of scotch. He nods, caving like a sinkhole. Yeah, okay, thanks, Henry. I smile cordially. You're welcome, Spencer. And I mean it. If you ask me, there's nothing better than a win-win.